just that, becoming once again Winston champion and collecting the $100,000 championship bonus. In funny car points, John Force leads, but has yet to overcome late season phenomenon Jim White. Force crew chief Austin Coyle has been fighting a losing battle with rival Wes Cerny. Force knows what he has to do.
I got to dance here for a couple of rounds and not get punched out. I need 2 rounds, and future looks real bright.
Since our car really started running fast, he's gotten more nervous by the minute, which I don't understand. I told him to go ahead and spend the money. He's already got the thing won. He doesn't believe me. We keep running fast. We keep running quick. He keeps getting nervous.
Speaking of nervous, Top Fuel points leader Joe Amato came to Dallas in a commanding position. But things went sour in round 1 as Maurice Dupont played giant killer for the 2nd race in a row.
It's never easy, I guess, in racing. You know, you never know what's going to happen. You know, it's just an unfortunate situation.
So for Kenny Bernstein, the path is clear. He and Dale Armstrong must aim for a pinpoint of light at the end of the tunnel.
It's a little bitty one, but certainly that's what has to happen, is him to go out early and us to keep winning for us to ever catch him. But it's still a long way, but at least maybe there's a chance.
The National Hot Rod Association presents championship drag racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship drag racing from the NHRA. Today, the $18 million Winston Championship Drag Racing Series stops outside of Dallas in Ennis, Texas at Billy Meyer's Texas Motorplex for the 17th event on the tour, the 6th annual Chief Auto Parts Nationals. This is a very unusual sight. The engine in Joe Amato's Top Fuel dragster with no hands working on it. Joe out of competition in round number 1, losing to Maurice Dupont here at the 6th annual running of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and welcome to the Texas Motorplex. Let's find out what went wrong with Joe Amato's run. We'll turn to the crew chief, Tim Richards. Tim, what happened?
We had a malfunction in the clutch activation system. We had it in the last qualifying run we made on Saturday, and apparently we never really got it fixed properly. It's really caused us quite a bit of trouble.
Kind of like a wake around here in the pit area.
It's very close.
One championship in the Winston points chase has been decided here at the Motorplex. For more on that story, my good friend, Steve Evans.
Right you are, David. Darrell and the dominating Dodge has done it again. For the 2nd year in a row, Darrell Alderman is the Winston Pro Stock champion. 10 event victories, an all-time record in the class.
Yeah, Steve, it's unbelievable. Someone could have told me at the beginning of the season that we were going to win 10 races, and I wouldn't have believed it. But the reason for our success this year is Wayne County Speed Shop. They've kept this car consistently fast, and we've had our share of good luck, too.
Indeed you have. Let's hope you have some more.
Thank you very much.
Now, Darrell has already run the first 2 rounds. We'll be seeing him in the final 4 later on this afternoon. Right now, let's go Top Fuel Racing.
Steve, we're going to pick up action in round number 2 with a very important race in the Winston point standing. This is Scott Coletta, and he stands a chance at becoming Joe Amato's very best friend if he can defeat this man, Kenny Bernstein. Kenny and Joe are locked in that struggle for the Winston point standings. Amato is already out of competition, and Bernstein is in a must-do situation. He must win this Chief Auto Parts Nationals if he hopes to move into Pomona in just 2 weeks with a shot at winning his first ever Top Fuel title. The point standings after round number 1 shows Amato in the lead. Bernstein could earn as many as 600 more points today. Prudhomme is in 3rd, Hawley 4th, and Laurie Johns is 5th. The way they got to round number 2, Prudhomme defeated Jimmy Nix while Gene Snow beat Laurie Johns. Corey McLenathan over a red-lighting Doug Herbert. And Pat Austin beat Frank Hawley. The other side of the eliminations ladder found Joe Amato falling to Maurice Dupont. We saw that just a few moments ago. Eddie Hill beat Cruz Pedregon. Scott Coletta beat Tommy Johnson Jr. and Kenny Bernstein upset Tom McEwen. You talk about a small light at the end of the tunnel. Let me tell you about this one for Kenny Bernstein. Not only does he have to win this race, that's going to be tough enough, but Joe Amato would have to lose in the first round at Pomona and Bernstein win that race to take home the Top Fuel title. But as long as there's a mathematical possibility, Kenny Bernstein's still alive in the Winston points chase. For Scott Coletta, one of his better showings, he's been able to master the conditions here, and they're kind of tough. The temperature is very warm. The track itself is rather hot. We've not seen the record-shattering performances we anticipated here at the Texas Motorplex. By virtue of his better ET in round number 1, Bernstein's got the lane choice. He's put the Budweiser King in the far lane, while the Coletta Flying Services car has been relegated to the near side of the racetrack. Bernstein's performance throughout this weekend has been in the low 5.0s, while Coletta running in the low 5Ts. And Coletta smokes the tires. Bernstein streaks across the finish line. His crew chief Dale Armstrong responding to a great 498, 291-mile-an-hour charge. He's going to need that kind of performance, and he hopes to win here at Dallas. The 1991 NHRA Chief Auto Parts Nationals is being brought to you by Goodyear, the unanimous choice of all the professional NHRA world champions from Top Fuel to Pro Stock. And by Goodies, the South's #1 headache powder. And by Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. More Top Fuel racing coming up next. In a funny car, Jim White set the record here at the Texas Motorplex at over 290 miles an hour, signing autographs, while the rest of the crew is getting Roland Leong's Hawaiian Punch Dodge prepared for the round number 2 race with Gary Bolger. Meantime, let's go down to the far end of the racetrack, where Steve Evans is with the Top Fuel contender.
Well, Kenny Bernstein thrills Joe Amato's psyche with a 498.
Oh, I didn't know it run that good. We stepped on a taste.
Well, it should run, really.
That's the way it should run every time out here, especially when you're chasing guys like Amato and Prudhomme who are running very quick. But that was a nice run. It's nice and smooth.
Now, Kenny Bernstein obviously pleased with that performance. Maybe the light down at the end of the tunnel getting just a little bit bigger. There's something, though, that could stand in everybody's way, and it is the Castrol dragster driven by Pat Austin. He has selected the far lane of the racetrack and put another young rising star driver, Corey McClenathan, over here nearest the camera. McClenathan out-qualified Austin, a 499 to a 5 flat. But in first-round performances, McClenathan smoked the tires while Pat Austin blasted out a 498 to join the ranks of 4 second runners here at the Chief Nationals. The burnout procedure completed. Both drivers into the staging process. They creep forward into an infrared beam stretched across the starting line. When both lights at the top of the tree are on, they're set. Light goes green. Austin by a car length. 5:04, the winning time at 290 miles an hour. Lee Beard, his crew chief, pleased with that kind of performance here in the heat of the day. Let's watch again. The advantage off the starting line going to Austin. We know that Corey McClenathan can run with Pat Austin, but the problem here was loss of traction. The tires smoking just a little bit. That let Austin squeeze ahead and stay ahead to the finish line. Our next pair. Here we find the quickest car on this racetrack this weekend, the Skull Bandit of Don Prudhomme. His performance this weekend is very reminiscent of just a few short weeks ago. Maple Grove in the Keystone Nationals, where he won that event from his #1 qualifying spot. His competition here, a very popular driver in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're talking about the snowman, Gene Snow, at the wheel of the Mopar dragster. For Prudhomme, he qualified #1 at a 493, then improved on that performance with a 492 in his first-round victory over Jimmy Nix. Gene Snow qualified 8th at a 5:04, but could not run that number in the first round against Laurie Johns. He slowed to a 5:69. Crew Chief Mike Brotherton throwing the final switch on Snow's dragster. Look at the raw fuel popping out of the engine of Don Prudhomme's. These engines now using incredible amounts of fuel. That's a good indicator that he's out for some power. Snow smokes the tires. Prudhomme across the finish line and into the final 4 with a 5:06, slowing just a bit at only 281 miles an hour, and that is a drastic drop in performance. He has been running as much as 293 miles an hour. Eddie Hill with his crew chief Fuzzy Carter directing him towards the starting line to proceed with his burnout. One of the most popular drag racers ever, and particularly in the state of Texas, Eddie Hill, hailing out of Wichita Falls, qualified the Super Shop dragster in the #7 spot. His competition, Maurice DuPont, in the Hammer Time entry, qualified 15th. The big question is, what happened to the performance of Don Prudhomme? Let's see if we can find out. Steve?
As long as this man has been around, I don't think I have to tell him that his performance fell off just a little bit here, Don, in round 2.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, well, you know, we just backed it up a little bit too much, I guess. You know, the track out here gets a little funny, so, you know, we just had to take our time with it. We'll step on it next round.
Steve Prudhomme makes it sound so easy, but you and I and everybody else that follows this sport knows that it's one of the more difficult things to do. That is gain a grasp on performance. Maurice DuPont's got a grasp on good luck. He defeated Eddie Hill in the first round 2 weeks ago at Topeka. Amato today, now in a rematch. Hill has got an opportunity for revenge. He's got the much quicker car, a 497 in the first round compared to a 511 for Maurice DuPont. That gives Eddie Hill the lane choice. He has selected the far side of the racetrack, as have all the other quick cars in Top Fuel round number 2. Hill, like Prudhomme, runs the engine very rich at the starting line. And it pays off a 5:05. Eddie's wife, Ursi, happy with that victory, 285 miles an hour. DuPont's string of upsets ending with a rather slow 5:44. That sets up the final 4 with Kenny Bernstein and Eddie Hill challenging each other. Both cars have run in the 4s this weekend, but Bernstein has the lane choice. Then it is the veteran Don Prudhomme against 26-year-old Pat Austin, but Austin gets to choose his lane. As the cheers and applause for Eddie Hill continue to ring around the Texas Motorplex, let's go to the far end and Steve.
Well, they like this man, Eddie Hill, all over the country, but in the state of Texas, they adore him, and they like that 5:05.
Well, it felt pretty good to me, too. I was hoping for a little more than that, but didn't try to smoke the tires, and maybe we can live with that.
You'll have to race Kenny Bernstein. He's hungry in the race with a motto. You've lost lane choice. That's all the bad news I have, though.
Well, yeah, there's quite a difference in the ETs, too. We'll have to see if we can't pull out a miracle here somewhere.
You've run in the 4s, you can get it back.
Maybe so. Hope so. We need it here, don't we?
Indeed.
As Eddie Hill and crew get ready to head back to the pit area, we've got funny cars coming up next. The 6th annual Chief Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex. It's time for funny cars. Al Hoffman first out of the burnout area, followed by Mike Dunn. There was a point earlier this season where Dunn, at the wheel of the E.B. Abel-owned Snickers Dodge Daytona, was in contention, was challenging for the Winston points lead held by John Force at that time. But as you can see, Dunn has fallen back to 3rd. The only man, even with a mathematical possibility of catching Force, is Jim White. And like Bernstein in Top Fuel, he's got quite a chore ahead of him. He won his first round race from his number 1 qualifying spot, while Gary Bolger defeated Whit Bazemore. John Force topped Jim Murphy, and it was Gordon Mineo getting an upset victory over Ed McCulloch. On the other side of the ladder, the number 2 qualifier, Mark Oswald, had problems on his run. That let Gary Densham take the victory. Del Worsham over Tom Hoover. Mike Dunn beat Johnny West, and Al Hoffman whipped up on Chuck Etchells. Mike Dunn's been having nothing but problems here this latter part of the season. He qualified here with a 5:26. That put him in the number 3 spot. But his first round race was only a 5:33, while Al Hoffman stepped up to a great 5:27. And that gave the blower drive service Ford Probe, tuned by that man Tommy Anderson, the choice of lanes here in round number 2. Al's wife Helen out in front directing traffic. Earlier this season, Hoffman picked up the title of the Winston Invitational down at Rockingham. Mike Dunn has visited the winner's circle 3 times thus far this year. Back-to-back victories at Memphis and Columbus, following up with another big win in the high country in Denver, Colorado. Starter Buster Couch looking on intently as both drivers creep into the staging beam. Dunn up in smoke as Hoffman streaks across the finish line. Look at Helen Hoffman. She's happy with that. 5:30 at 274 miles an hour, maintaining the consistency that it takes to be competitive in this very tough category. The body coming down on Jim White's Hawaiian Punch Dodge. There are days that things just seem to go right for you, and that's what's happened here for Jim White. As Chief Starter Buster Couch watches a single burnout, White will be the only car on the racetrack in this run, as his competition, Gary Bolger, was unable to repair the engine damage in the Creasy family entry. That was suffered in his first round victory over Whit Bazemore on a tire-blazing run. As Roland Leong marks the spot, let's go to Steve Evans at the far end.
The Al Hoffman car has been fairly quiet the last few races, but boy, you have woken it up here in Dallas. A 5:30, a 5:27 earlier.
It's been fairly quiet. A few races, I guess. It ain't been going anywhere.
We found something.
Yeah, we had a little gremlin in that thing. It just slowed its way down the last 3 races. And Tommy found it, we changed it, and I think we stepped ahead of where we were.
You've got something you can fight with today.
This could be an important run in the Winston points chase, even though it is just a single. White qualified at a 5.148. That would serve as a great backup for a new national record. The time to beat is a 5.140. That also held by White. Buster Cap getting ready to throw the switch. White is staged, and Buster sends him on his way. Not a record time, but certainly great run. Here, as hot as it is in Dallas, a 5:21, 288-mile-an-hour blast. Jim White moves into the final 4. In the top fuel pit area, there's an engine change going on. Kenny Bernstein's crew has removed a damaged motor and put a new short block in. The problem was a blackened crankshaft, one of the main bearings not doing its job. So a new short block in, that means regular maintenance on the cylinder heads and the supercharger. He'll be ready to race Eddie Hill in the final 4. Right now, with one of our final 4 competitors in Funny Car, here's Steve.
Talk about a man who wants lane choice in the next round. 5:21.
Yeah, Wes really believed that the track was in good shape. We'd run the other side first round this morning. We saw those winners in top fuel on the other side, so we decided we'd run over there. It seems to be a little better.
Big speed, 288.
Yeah, it's real nice, too, when you shut it off at the first light and it runs like that.
All right, the next pair features John Force, so we'll be watching this, you and I.
Yeah, I'll watch.
I would imagine he is. Jim White trying to close on John Force for the Winston Funny Car crown. This is Eddie Hill's pit area. The brain trust going over the records while the crew preparing the engine. They know that Kenny Bernstein's had problems and that the engine change is taking place there. Just normal maintenance, though, for Eddie Hill. On the racetrack, our next pair of funny cars will be getting to John Force's race in just a moment. Right now, it is Del Worsham and Gary Densham. Del, at the age of 21, has never driven anything in drag racing except this car, the Oldsmobile, tuned by his dad, Chuck Worsham. His competition here in round number 2 is a guy that got a big break in the first round. This is Gary Densham at the wheel of the California Discount Warehouse Oldsmobile. The big break came when Densham got the victory over number 2 qualifier Mark Oswald. Oswald backfiring through the supercharger on the starting line. Meantime, Del Worsham had a 5:31 to defeat Tom Hoover. That time gives him almost 0.2 of a second advantage over Densham. And the lane choice, he's picked the far side of the track. A huge hole shot for Gary Densham. But Del Worsham comes from behind to pick up the victory. 5:34 at 279. Dencham's time with that brilliant leave was a 5:52. The margin of victory at the finish line only 45 thousandths of a second. And that may be a bit closer than Worsham would have liked. Densham got off the starting line with over 1/10 of a second reaction time advantage. Look at the difference it makes at the 1/8 of a mile. He's got more than a car length daylight on Del Worsham. But by the time they had passed the 1,000-foot mark, Worsham was making his move until they crossed the finish line and the positions were reversed. A car length victory for Del Worsham.
Well, Del Worsham was apologizing to his dad after first round for his reaction time, and he may have to apologize just a little bit again. You're a bit late, but you ran him down. That's what counts.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Maybe it's a car.
Nah, it's me. I'm doing my best. It's just, I gotta get better.
5:34.
Well, yeah, what'd he run?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right.
And Del Worsham acknowledging that the goal of this sport is to cross the finish line first. Back at the starting line, our next pair already well into their burnout procedures. It is the man currently leading the Winston points chase, and you're riding on board the Castrol GTX Oldsmobile of John Force. Backing up alongside of him is his competition, Gordon Mineo. While down at the far end of the racetrack, that is Jim White. You know what he's thinking here. Can Gordon Mineo pull off the upset of this race? Mineo has already had one big upset when in first round racing he defeated the number 5 qualifier, Ed McCulloch. Mineo returning to this sport after more than a decade layoff. John Force qualified in the number 4 spot and had a quick time in round number 1 of 5:31. John's racing philosophy has changed over the last few races. His current thinking, just keep winning rounds and keep pace with Jim White and pick up his second Winston title.
Come on, Flash.
Force smokes the tires. Jim White obviously pleased as John Force falls to Flash Gordon Mineo. Another big upset.
You're alive more than ever now. We are alive and well. I can't believe they smoked the tires out here like that. They're good guys. They're world champions. I'm glad we don't have to race them next round.
And you will have a lane choice over Mineo.
Sounds good to me.
Gordon Mineo on that run ran a 5:36, a far cry from the time of a 5:21 earlier by Jim White. Look at this race. Gordon Mineo was glued to the pavement the moment they left the starting line. For John Force, it was a few hundred feet down track that the tire smoke started. That was enough to put him out of this race. Gordon Mineo into the final 4, and Jim White advancing even closer to John Force in the Winston points chase. Maybe this is a good reason why John Force hasn't yet started spending the money. Steve?
But John Force just had his worst nightmare come true, John.
Yeah, it sure is, Steve. Kind of opens the ball game up again, but that's okay. They got to prove themselves here. They got to run that big number, and conditions aren't there. We overguessed it. Something went wrong there.
Understandably subdued, but very accurate. He knows that Jim White has got to set a new national ET record. It may come in the next round. Jim White against Gordon Mineo. White with the lane choice. The other half of the final 4 pairings finds Al Hoffman against Del Worsham, with Hoffman holding the lane choice. Meanwhile, let's take a moment to go back to the pit area of Kenny Bernstein. The engine change proceeding as Kenny himself using a hydrometer to read the fuel mixture.
We're going to stop there.
He seems to be happy with that blend of nitromethane. Pro Stock coming up next. At the Texas Motorplex near Ennis, Texas, this is the 6th annual running of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, and the biggest crowd in the history of this racetrack has jammed into the facility. Over 51,000 on hand today to watch all of the excitement. In Don Prudhomme's pit area, the question is, can they regain the performance that carried him to a 492 in the first round? On the starting line, it's time for the final 4 of Pro Stock Eliminator. Here is your new Winston champion for the 2nd year in a row, the Mopar Bart's Dodge Daytona, driven by Darrell Alderman. His competition, the Castrol Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan, currently 4th in the Winston point standings. The battle now is from 2nd place down, as Johnson is 2nd, Scott Jeffrey on his teammate 3rd, and Bob Glidden number 5. Johnson worked his way to the final 4 by beating Kenny Delco from his number 1 qualifying spot, then beat Frank Iaconio. The other side of the ladder saw Jerry Haas defeat Scott Jeffrey on, and then Bob Glidden. Darrell Alderman qualified 2nd. He beat Don Beverly and Mark Powick, while Larry Morgan from his number 3 qualifying spot defeated Ricky Smith and the Pontiac of Jerry Ekman. With the temperatures reaching into the low 90s here at the Texas Motorplex, that heat apparently has created more problems for Alderman's Dodge than it has Morgan's Oldsmobile. Morgan has got the lane choice, and the Pro Stock racers seem to prefer the lane nearest the camera. That's the lane that Morgan has selected. Larry qualified in the number 3 spot with a 7:24, then ran 7:27 in the first round and a 7:25 in round number 2. For Darrell Alderman, his qualifying time, number 2 at a 7:24. He matched that in the first round, then slowed to a 7:31 in his victory over Mark Powick in round number 2. They're both coming into the staging beams here in the final 4 of Pro Stock Eliminator. Alderman in the far lane with the Dodge, the Oldsmobile in the near lane, driven by Larry Morgan, owned by Bob Panella. You're riding with Darrell Alderman. And it's an upset. Larry Morgan pulls out the victory. The crew chief, Gary Pearman, very happy with the kind of performance he's seeing. 7:26 at 190 miles an hour. The losing time for Alderman a 7:29 at only 189 miles an hour. The reaction time advantage was gained by Alderman as we look at instant replay. He picked up nearly 0.02 of a second on the starting line. So, coming from behind was the rule of the day for Larry Morgan. He used every bit of this 1,320-foot racing surface, taking the victory in the final few feet. Steve?
Well, on this day, the Dodge was vulnerable to Larry Morgan. 7:26 beat his 29. Nice driving, nice race.
Thank God I beat that Dodge. That Dodge has beat me so bad all year. Thank God.
You were the #1 qualifier for a good long time. Warren Johnson stuck ahead of you, but now you've got your performance back.
Well, we were testing things, and obviously it got us a little bit behind, but you know, I think that our chances are good in the final. I sure would love to win.
And the happiest man in the place is Bob Piniella, the car owner, back at the starting line.
Steve, Bob Piniella has been in this sport for well over 2 decades, going back to the very earliest days of the gas coupe sedan wars. Here's the Oldsmobile of Jerry Haas against the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. Haas had an upset victory in round number 1, turning a 7:33, gaining a big hole shot over Scott Jeffrey on, then ran 7:36 when he put away Bob Glidden's Ford in round number 2. For Johnson, he has been the class of this field performance-wise with the AC Delco Oldsmobile, qualifying with a 7:23, running 7:23 in the first round and a 7:24 in round number 2. There in the shorts is the legendary Bill Grumpy Jenkins. He is the crew chief on Jerry Haas's Oldsmobile. Both drivers now bringing their cutlasses to the starting line. 500 cubic inches maximum, 2 4-barrel carburetors. The cars must run on racing gasoline. No additives, no nitromethane here. And they weigh 2,350 pounds minimum with a driver on board. Problems for Jerry Haas as Warren Johnson streaks to the finish line. His elapsed time, 7:24 at 192 miles an hour. He will pick up the lane choice in the final round when he goes up against a very similar Oldsmobile driven by Larry Morgan. 14 thousandths of a second separated their performances here in the final 4. That new engine in Kenny Bernstein's car apparently running okay. So Kenny getting ready for his race against Eddie Hill. That'll be the final 4 in Top Fuel coming up in just a few moments. Right now to the far end, and Steve Evans.
Well, I don't know if lane choice really matters today with the Pro Stock cars, but Warren Johnson, you've got it. Your 7:24 gets it over Morgan.
Well, 24 or 26, that's awful good racing. It's going to be who leaves first here, and I don't think there's really any difference between lanes here, Steve.
That's Alderman you hear going back to the pits, a beaten man.
Well, that's the way it is.
Somebody had to take care of him.
The final 4 in Top Fuel coming up next. It's business as usual for crew chief Wes Cerny and the rest of the crew on Jim White's Hawaiian Punch funny car, getting it ready for the final 4 race with Gordon Mineo. On the starting line, Top Fuel eliminator, that is John Medlin, the crew chief for Don Prudhomme, the man that the Snake credits for giving the Skoal Bandit the performance that has qualified him #1 and made him the favorite at least up until this point. Right now, Pat Austin in the Castrol Dragster has got the lane choice because he ran quicker in the previous round, a 5:04 to a 5:06. Prudhomme's got low ET of the meet at a 4.92 thus far, but with that last round, fell off considerably. Final check by the crew on both cars. The drivers now concentrating on getting into the staging beams exactly where they want to be and getting the best lead possible, and Austin, regarded by many as one of the best drivers this sport has ever seen. He did it again, a big hole shot, but he smokes the tires. Prudhomme squeaks by, wins the race. 5 seconds flat at only 278 miles an hour. Obviously, whatever troubled them in round number 2 is long gone with that 5 flat performance. Backing out at the top end is the reason why the speed slowed so. Here in instant replay, you can see the advantage over 0.05 of a second gained by Austin. but the white smoke coming off the tires indicated loss of traction. That allowed Prudhomme not only to catch up, but to squeeze by, and Prudhomme streaked to the finish line to move into the final round once again. The question now is, will the 5 flat hold up for lane choice?
Well, Don Prudhomme steps the pace back up with 5 flat.
Well, that's okay, I guess, for now. You know, the track's a little tricky right now, and we just didn't know it would hold. But I think John made the right decision.
Did not have the big top-end charge it had in qualifying. No 290s.
No, I don't know what's happening to it. It's just kind of fallen off. We're just going to have to take a look at it. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Good luck in the final.
Thank you.
Our next race will decide the competition for Prudhomme in that final round. Will it be this man, Eddie Hill, the Texan, at the wheel of the Super Shops dragster? He certainly has got a rooting section standing down here at the starting line right now. That's Joe Amato, along with Mr. Gasket Joe Harudka, intently looking on. But on paper, at least, this guy, Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser King, has got to be the favorite. He ran a 4.98 in the second round to a 5.05 for Eddie Hill. But remember, they had to change engines after that second round race due to internal damage. The question is, can that man standing at the front of the car, the crew chief Dale Armstrong, set the tune-up the same? Can he duplicate? Can he repeat the 4.98? Easily outdistancing Eddie Hill. Kenny Bernstein keeps his Winston hopes alive. Joe Amato doesn't look very happy at this moment. Bernstein's elapsed time, another 5 flat at over 280 miles an hour. We go to the thousandth of a second. And in the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator here at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, Don Prudhomme will pick the lane by a mere 6 thousandths of a second. In the funny car pit area, the clutch cover going back on Al Hoffman's car. There's Hoffman and his crew, headed up by Tommy Anderson, preparing the blower drive service Ford Probe for their match against Del Worsham in the Final 4. That'll be coming up in just a very few moments. In Top Fuel Eliminator, it is truly a storybook finish. 2 of the greatest competitors to meet in the final.
What a final we have coming up in Top Fuel. Kenny Bernstein versus Don Prudhomme. Kenny, you ran a 5 flat, but lost lane choice by a tick.
Oh, that's tough, isn't it? Well, I don't know if it matters. That track's awful good out there. It's Dallas, Texas, is one of the best racetracks in the country. I don't know if it matters right now. I don't know if that old sun's going to go down too much more anyway, so it probably doesn't matter.
Last time you and Snake got together was in Montreal. It was my favorite race of the year.
It was a great race. If I remember, 5:02, 5:03. I mean, it was a heck of a run, and he's running so good, we're going to really have to be on top of it.
What a drag race this one's going to be.
Steve, that classic battle will be coming up in just a few moments here at the Texas Motorplex. Right now, we're getting ready for the Final 4 of Funny Car. That's coming up next. Annual running of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. It is a full house at one of the biggest drag racing facilities anywhere in the world. This is the famed Texas Motorplex at Ennis, Texas. I'd like to take this moment to invite you to become a member of the very special organization, the National Hot Rod Association. For just $45 a year, you got 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, a pin, a rule book, and a whole lot more. And if you order by calling the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 90. Call today, won't you? As Jim White gets into his burnout procedure, there is at least one racer here who is intensely interested in the outcome of this race. Right now, he is with Steve Evans.
Proud to have John Forrest down here at the far end. John, you can hear Jim White, his opponent, running up there. What's going through your mind?
Well, you know, it's a lot of money on the line here with NHRA Winston, but if these guys can do it, they'll just astound me. I'm sweating it. It's been a long year.
Let's watch.
There's a $150,000 bonus payout at the end of the year, and this man, Roland Leong, wants it every bit as bad as John Force.
Come on, baby. Get greedy. Get greedy. Give him a big O. I watched Raymond Beadle stand down here and sweat like this once, years ago.
How ironic it is that it is Raymond Beadle's old car. That's the former Blue Max here in the near lane, now driven by its new owner, Flash Gordon Mineo, challenging Jim White. And Mineo goes up in smoke.
He ain't bluffing.
He's certainly not. Steve?
White's won another one. No record, though, 523, but still 200 more points in his column.
Well, he's good. 200 points. I ain't going to do it. He's slow. He needs that 13 He's got to find it. It's going to be tough, Steve.
I think that win alone is enough for him to push this thing to Pomona, formally.
Well, we're out for today, so just bring him on to Pomona. We're ready to drag race.
That pressure staying on John Force. It'll be 2 weeks for the Winston Finals in Pomona to decide the outcome of the Winston Chase for Funny Car Eliminator. Here's the remaining 2 cars. The winner here goes against Jim White. Del Worsham in his Oldsmobile, the Todern and Worsham car against the blower drive service Ford Probe, driven by Al Hoffman. Let's go back to the far end of the track.
Jim White and his push-button race car. Another 5:23. Right on the money, right on the mark.
Yeah, it really was. The car shuddered just a little bit, just about 400 feet out. We probably shook a little bit of ET off, but it was real smooth. We've just tried to keep the clutch system real smooth all day today. Wes Cerny, Roland Leong, the entire Hawaiian Punch team really do a great job.
Not only was John Force watching that race, now he's watching the thermometer, hoping it doesn't cool off enough for you to run quicker.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. He's probably paying close attention, because if it cooled off a little bit, we'd get serious.
Steve, for Jim White to have a fighting chance, more than a mathematical chance to win the Winston title at Pomona, he has got to win the race here today and set a new national record in the process. And that's why everybody's so interested in what the temperature is going to do. The cooler it becomes, the cooler the track becomes, the better the shot Jim White will have at a new national standard. The Oldsmobile of Del Worsham over here in the near lane of the racetrack. He lost lane choice in the previous round as the surprising Al Hoffman has been upset-minded all day long. His wife Helen getting him positioned exactly where she wants him on the starting line. The time difference of 5:30 to a 5:34. The advantage going to Hoffman. The body up over there, the crew chief Tom Anderson performing those chores. A very normal procedure for Al Hoffman. The crews are all happy. Now it's up to the driver. Worsham knows that he has got to improve on his reaction time if he hopes for any kind of a chance at all. He did not, and look at the advantage for Al Hoffman. Into the finals, Al Hoffman at a 5:33, 276 miles an hour. Not only was Worsham a little bit slow off the starting line, the car could not run the number either. 5:41 was his time at 271 miles an hour. So for the 4th race in a row, Jim White is in the final round, and he has the lane choice over Al Hoffman. Win or lose, this has been quite a day for Hoffman. He's pulled off a number of upsets.
With all the media hype on John Force and on Jim White, this man Al Hoffman has just kind of snuck his way through the pack. Great job.
I think we're sneaking pretty quick. What'd it run?
5:33, but you had him from 300 feet on. You daylighted him at the finish line.
Yeah, I didn't see him after I stepped on the throttle. What'd White run?
23.
We can grab a 10th easy here.
Yeah, right.
Final round racing in all pro categories coming up next. You consider the importance of the next race in Top Fuel Eliminator. Things are rather calm in the Budweiser King pit area. That's Mike Guger proceeding ahead with the engine rebuild. They take these engines completely apart between rounds to make sure there's no hurt parts or pieces inside of them. Over in the Skoll Bandit pit area of Don Prudhomme, much the same as the attitude there. Very planned, very precise procedures being conducted. That race will be coming up in just a few moments. Out on the starting line area, it is time for Pro Stock Eliminator, the final round, and it is a battle of Oldsmobiles. The Castrol car, owned by Bob Pinella and driven by Larry Morgan, is taking on the quickest car of the weekend in Pro Stock. We're talking about the Cutlass of Warren Johnson. The AC Delco Oldsmobile ran a 7:24 in the final 4, some 14 thousandths of a second quicker than his competition, Larry Morgan. The lane choice going to WJ. He selected the lane nearest the camera. The engine's coming up in RPM and a red light by Johnson. Larry Morgan is the champion. Warren Johnson just moving too soon, disqualifying himself right at the starting line. And Larry Morgan has won the Chief Nationals. Watch again in replay. Watch the car nearest the camera. You see how he moved too quick and the big red light shining? That means instant loss. And Larry Morgan had taken the Chief Auto Parts Nationals Pro Stock title. Steve?
Larry Morgan, a great run here in Dallas. You beat the best.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, it's all these guys, we all ran together this weekend, and it was a good race. And for Castro, Oldsmobile, Bob Pinella, all my guys that work with me, especially my guys here, Tom Roberts, Gary Pearman, my guys to shop, Jim Oliver, Jay Justice, and Andy Magnuson, my wife, son, I wish that they would have been here. They weren't. This is all for them. Thank you.
Morgan's victory reshuffles the Winston point standings. He moves up to third. Scott Jeffrey on down to fourth, and Bob Glidden number 5. Meanwhile, back at the starting line, Al Hoffman awaits his biggest race of the day and the toughest. He meets Jim White in the funny car final. Forward is Jim White at the wheel of the Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona into a strong burnout. Here has been the most consistent car for the last 4 races. We're talking about that Dodge. He is racing against the upset-minded, and the guy that's been able to pull off the big victories when he needs them, Al Hoffman at the wheel of the blower drive service Ford Probe. The lane choice here by 1/10 of a second going to Jim White. Al Hoffman, in his winning interview after the race in the Final Four, said he could find another 10th. Question is, who knows? There's Wes Cerny. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with him about this race car.
The crew on the Jim White car, headed by Wes Cerny, has a tough decision to make. Let's see if they've made that call. Wes, do you go for the record, the bonus points, a slim shot at a championship, or do you try to win the race and the $25,000 or $30,000 that goes with it?
Really, Steve, we've looked at the points, and it's just out of reach by about 15 points. So rather than try and get a 512 or something out of this thing and smoke the tires, we're going to try and win the race. We're going to try and run 521, 522, and we're hoping we'll see another 290 at the finish line.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, John Force certainly happy to hear those kind of thoughts, but Al Hoffman probably is not. White moving into the staging beam. John Force once again looking on from the far end.
I consider it over right here. You don't get no 513. I ain't failed to qualify in 100 years.
If White wins over Hoffman and fails to set the record, all Force has to do is qualify at Pomona.
White's finally learned how to drive.
John just about as nervous as I have ever seen him, watching what could be the determining race in his chase for the Winston Championship. And White smokes the tires.
So,
John, it's over.
That's it. I can't even believe it.
It is finally over.
Yeah, and I'm still sick. I'm in shock. I got to see this boy Hoffman. Well, I don't think they went for the record. I don't know what they did. I don't even care. I'm going home. It's done. I survived another year. Awesome.
As John Force sprints off to offer his congratulations to Al Hoffman, let's look again in replay, and you can see exactly what happened to Jim White in the far lane. He left the starting line very strongly. Then the tires broke loose. At that point, Hoffman was still behind, but White could not recover and had to lift, letting Hoffman thunder past for the victory and his first ever NHRA Winston Championship event title. Quite a day for Al Hoffman in the blower drive service Probe. Steve?
Al Hoffman's crew chief Tom Anderson told me minutes before the run, I prepared this car to run mid-530s. Who cares? You won it with a 36.
Yeah, I left the tire boy, left the lights. It just spun the tire and didn't go anywhere, but when it did, it started to get with it. I didn't think it was a real good run, but as soon as it go by White, I knew it was good enough.
You know, you've won the Winston Invitational. This is your first true national event victory. Congratulations.
25 years I've been trying to get one of them little Oscar guys. I'm going to go down and see what it looks like.
I'm sure you'll find a nice place for it. Again, great job, and congratulations, your wife, Helen, BDS, and all of you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
The Oscar, of course, the trophy presented to the winners. The Winston points chase, John Force the leader, and with the exception of qualifying at Pomona, the champion. Jim White second, Dunn is third, Oswald fourth, and Ed McCulloch number 5. Joe Amato looking on. He, like John Force, has got a vested interest in this race. He is trying for an unprecedented 4th Winston title, and the only driver to stand in his way is the Budweiser King, Kenny Bernstein. What a match this is. The only four-time funny car champions in Winston drag racing, Don Prudhomme and Kenny Bernstein, are meeting here in the finals of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals in Top Fuel Eliminator. Bernstein's crew thinks they have found a problem that may have existed prior to this round. Steve checked it out.
For Final Four competition, the crew on Kenny Bernstein's car set the machine up to run about 285 in about 4.96 seconds. It didn't do that, and here maybe is why. This little ground wire came off the chassis, and that generally causes the points to fail in one of the two magnetos. The computer tape bears that out. It dropped 10 miles an hour in about 0.04 of a second. So with this simple repair, the snake could have a real race on his hands. But here's a final thought. Kenny Bernstein in final round competition this year is 6-0. No one's ever run 7. Depending on how you look at it, that might be in Prudhomme's favor.
And Steve, it might well be in the favor of Joe Amato, who's really in the driver's seat in this Winston points chase. Even if Bernstein should win today, Amato would have to go out in the first round at Pomona and Bernstein win that event as well for the lead to change hands and Bernstein to become the champion. Prudhomme, the quicker of the two cars in the final four. And Prudhomme wins the race. The crew celebrates. Joe Amato celebrates. What a weekend we have seen in Winston points racing. Darrell Alderman has clinched the Pro Stock title in Top Fuel and Funny Car. All John Force and Joe Amato has to do is qualify at Pomona, and we will have 3 repeat champions. It's happened only one time before, 1985 and 1986. Here, Don Prudhomme in replay has pulled well ahead of Kenny Bernstein. By the time they reached the finish line, more than a car length daylight separated those two vehicles. Prudhomme coming home the champion.
Revenge for Montreal.
I think so. I owe that Bernstein one. You know, he's a great competitor, though, and it's just an honor to be, racing with guys like him and Amato and just all the rest of them in Top Fuel. It's just been a thrill to jump over in this category and be able to run like this.
5 flat.
Well, hey,
cares, right?
Who cares? Yeah, it's right now we're just not on our game, and thing has fell off some, and really don't know what's wrong with it right now, but it was good enough to win. And just want to thank Skull Band, the Tech School have, and Pontiac, the people that stayed with me.
You had a bit of luck. Let's look at the blower belt here. You notice that?
Yeah, I sure did. It kicked loose, Steve, coming into the lights and so on, and it just really threw everything off. I'm surprised it made it that far.
You can afford to buy a couple now.
Yeah, I sure can. I'm just really tickled. John Medlin and all the crew, Skull Bandit crew, has done a great job. Thank you.
Don Prudhomme, your Top Fuel champion here at Dallas, and the point standings, Amato first, Bernstein second, with very little chance to do anything about it. Prudhomme is third, Frank Hawley fourth, and Laurie John number 5. 1 race to go in the series. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long for now. The 1991 NHRA Chief Auto Parts Nationals has been brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. And by Budweiser, the king of beers, with that clean, crisp, cold taste, nothing beats a Bud. Coverage of the NHRA Chief Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.